Okay, today we're going to talk about how to do operations with fractions. So the first thing you need to understand when we talk about operations with fractions is how to simplify into what's called lowest terms. And the way that you do that is, so I have my fraction here, 12 over 20. And you want to find the number that can go into both 12 and 20. One good way, because if you notice they're both even numbers, is obviously to divide down by 2. You can keep dividing down by 2 until you get into lowest terms. But what I would advise you to do is find the bigger number that can go into 12 and 20, and then divide both of those by that number. So what number can go into 12 and 20 as well? And that would be 4. So if I divide the top by 4 and the bottom by 4, what do I get? Up top is I get 3, and on the bottom I get 5. And so now this is in lowest terms, because there is no number that can go into 3 and 5, so you know that that is your final answer in lowest terms. Now if you look at the next example here that I have written down, I have 40 over 22. Okay, so you want to find what number can go into both 40 and 22. And in this case, the number that is going to be 2. So 2 can go into both 40 and 2 can go into 22. So when you divide 40 by 2, of course you get 20. And then when you divide 22 by 2, you get 11. And so you can leave it like this. Most people want to change this into, a mixed number. But you can actually leave it like this. This is called the improper fraction, when you have a bigger number on top than you do on the bottom. And then my last example here is I have 13 over 15. Now, can we reduce that into lowest terms? No, we can't, because there is no number that can go into 13, and there is no number that can go into 15. So in that case, this right here is our answer in lowest terms. So now the next thing we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about how to multiply fractions. And when you multiply fractions, you just multiply going straight across. So let's say, and always simplify if possible. So let's say that I have 2 sevenths times 3 over 8. Okay, so I have these two fractions here. And you're going to want to multiply going straight across. So multiply your top numbers together. So 2 times 3 gives you 6. And multiply your bottom numbers together. So 7 times 8 gives you 56. Okay, and always we want to simplify if possible. So is there a number that can go into 6 and 56? Well, let's try 3. Let's try 2. Okay, so if we do 2, so 6 divided by 2 is 3. And what's half of 56? It's going to be 28. Okay, so this will be our answer in lowest terms, because we can't go any further. 3 can't go into 28 at all. Okay, so let's try another one. Let's say I have 1/2, and I want to multiply that by 3/4. Okay, so once again, we want to multiply going straight across. So 1 times 3 is 3, and 2 times 4 is 8, and our answer right here is in lowest terms, because there's no number that can go into 3 and 8. Now let's work on dividing fractions. So when you divide fractions, there's one thing you need to do before you start dividing. And so for an example, let's say I have 2 sevenths, and I want to divide that by 2 thirds. Okay, what you need to do first is you need to take the second fraction, and you need to do what's called take the reciprocal of it, or otherwise known as I'd call it turn it upside down. Okay, so you're going to take this fraction right here, and you're going to turn it upside down, or take the reciprocal. Once you do that, you actually get 3 over 2. So now I have 2 over 7, and then I have 3 over 2, and after you take the reciprocal of it, you're going to change it from division to multiplication. And then so now you're going to multiply, and simplify always if possible. So when I multiply these, I have 2 times 3, which gives you 6, and on the bottom I have 7 times 2, which gives you 14. And of course we want to simplify into lowest terms if possible. So what can go into 6 and what can go into 14? And once again, it's 2. So when you divide the top and bottom by 2, you get 3 over 7. And that will be your final answer. So when it comes to dividing fractions, you want to take the reciprocal of the second fraction. Once again, that's known as turning it upside down, and then change your division to multiplication, and then multiply like we just learned how to do. Let's try one more example for division. Let's say I have 1 over 7, and I want to divide that by 3, the whole number. Okay, now sometimes people get confused with this because they don't know what exactly to do with the 3. But you can always put the 3 over 1 to make it appear like a fraction, and now we can take the reciprocal of that, because what is the reciprocal of 3 over 1? That'll be 1 over 3. So now I have 1 over 7 times 1 over 3. And once again, after you take the reciprocal, remember you change the division to multiplication. So now you can multiply. So multiply your top numbers together. So 1 times 1 is 1. Multiply your bottom numbers together, and 7 times 3 is 21. So your final answer is going to be 1 over 21. So now the next thing we're going to learn how to do is how to add and subtract. We're going to start off with when you have a common denominator, or in other words, the same bottom numbers. So let's say, for example, I have 6 over 15 plus 2 over 15. Notice I have the same bottom numbers here. So when you have the same denominators and the same bottom numbers, you pretty much just work with what's up top. So 6 plus 2 will give you 8, and then you keep your common denominator, or you keep the same bottom number, which will give you over 15. So your final answer would be 8 over 15. And always simplify if possible. And in this example here, that doesn't simplify because there is no number that can go into both 8 and 15. Let's try a subtraction problem. Let's say I have 10 over 20 minus 6 over 20. Okay, so let's say that I have these two. Once again, I have my same denominator of 20. So now we can work with what's up top. So 10 minus 6 gives me 4. So now I have 4 over 20. And we can simplify this because what number can go into both 4 and 20? And now it's 4. So if you divide the top number by 4, you get 1. If you divide 20 by 4, you get 5. So this 4 over 20 actually simplifies down to 1 over 5. Now I bet you're probably thinking, well, what do we need to do if we don't have the same denominator, if they're different? And so we're going to do that one next. That's called finding the common denominator. So in other words, let's say that I have 3 over 4 plus 1/2. Okay, so let's look at this and figure out, okay, I can't add those up yet because they have to have a common denominator. So what you want to do is you want to look at your denominators and figure out, okay, 4 and 2, what numbers can they go into? So in other words, you're trying to find the biggest number that 2 and 4 can go into. And in this case, it's actually going to be 4, because 4 can go into 4 and 2 can go into 4. So 4 is going to be your new denominator that they both have in common. Now in order to get the top number, you got to ask yourself, what did I do to this 4 to get there? In other words, 4 times what is 4 again, which is 1. What you do on the bottom, so since I timed this by 1, I have to time the top by 1. So 3 times 1 is going to give you 3. Do the same thing with the second fraction. Obviously 2 times 2 gives you 4, so I multiply the bottom times 2. What you do on the bottom, you have to do the same thing on the top, so 1 times 2 is going to give you 2. Now we have the same denominator like we just previously learned how to do, so now you can add the top and keep the same denominator. So 3 plus 2 will give you 5, so your final answer here will be 5 over 4. Okay, how about we try one more addition and then we'll move to a subtraction problem. Let's say I have 3 over 7 plus 2/3. We'll do it that way. Okay, so let's say I have 3 over 7 plus 2 over 3. Now once again, you have to figure out what is your common denominator. So 3 and 7, what number can they both go into? And one way to think about this too, if you're having troubles, is I always take the bigger number, which is 7, and I gotta go through that times table. So 7 times 1 is 7. Can 3 go into 7? No. 7 times 2 is 14. Can 3 go into 14? No. 7 times 3 is 21. Can 3 go into 21? Yes. So I kind of do that in my head to help me figure out what the common denominator is. So now we've got to figure out what our top numbers are going to be. So 7 times what number is 21? It's 3. So that means I have to multiply 3 times 3, and that'll give me 9. So my 9 will be my new numerator, or top number. And what we're doing is we're doing what's called finding the equivalent fraction to be able to add these fractions together. So let's do the same thing with the second fraction. So 3 times what number is 21? That'll be 7. So 2 times 7 will give you 14. And so now we have the same denominator, which is 21 on the bottom, which is what we wanted. And so now we add 14 and 9 together and we get 23. So your final answer here would be 23 over 21. And the same process works for subtraction. So let's go ahead and actually do a subtraction problem. That way that you kind of have the same idea as to how to go about it. Okay, so let's say, for example, we want to do, let's see, 7 over, I'm going to open it in the corner, 7 over 10 minus 8 over 15. And of course, we always want to simplify if possible. Okay, so now we're looking at this, and we want to figure out what would be our common denominator. And you can do what I do. I take the bigger number and kind of go through their times tables. So obviously, by figuring this out, we notice that 30 is going to be our common denominator because both 10 and 15 can go into 30. So now we figured out what our common denominator is. Let's figure out what our top numbers are. 10 times 3 is 30. So that means I have to multiply 7 times 3. 7 times 3 is 21. Let's do the same thing with the other fraction. 15 times 2 is 30. So that means I have to multiply 8 times 2, and that gives me 16. Okay, so now we have just gone about, I'm going to erase this in the corner. So now we have just found our equivalent fractions with our same denominator, so now we're able to subtract them. Then keep in mind you want to keep your same denominator as you do this. So what's 21 minus 6? That'll give you 5. So we have 5 over 30, but we always want to simplify if possible. Okay, so we got to simplify this down into lowest terms, and by doing so we realize that 5 can go into both 5 and 30. So when you divide the top and bottom by 5, your final answer ends up becoming 1 over 6. So hopefully this video has kind of helped you get more familiar with how to work with operations on fractions.